Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is Talking Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
Well, one probe that they had to create to withstand temperature variations is the Solar Orbiter, and that's on its way to the sun right now.
That's right. You know, we've talked a lot about the sun in the past couple of weeks. Well, Solar Parker probe results and the new telescope in Hawaii. And now, as you said, Solar Orbiter has been launched, which is, and it's complementary. It's not trying to look at the surface of the sun. It's not trying to get as close as, say, Parker probe, but what it's trying to do is to see some of the interactions of the magnetic field and see some of those things that leave the surface of the sun. So trying to connect the dots from looking directly at the surface to what the corona is doing with Solar Parker probe and how that intermixes. And kind of a good thing about it, NASA's had the SOHO probes up there for a better part of 2 decades, which are getting older. So it's kind of replacing some of this technology of viewing the sun.
And the Solar Orbiter is a collaboration with the European Space Agency. They actually built it, I believe it was Airbus in the UK.
That's right. You know, it was a great collaboration where NASA had some of the instruments led by Europe, and as you said, built together by Airbus. And you know, I think it'll do quite cool things. It's funny because we sometimes think, oh, the sun, okay, we know that. Oh, well, there's a lot we don't know. And the sun is our perfect example to understand all the other stars. The more we know about the sun, the more we know about other stars.
The really cool thing about this one is that it's going to be using slingshot maneuvers between Venus and Earth to get above the poles. And I didn't realize that, as you're sort of alluding to there, Brad, we don't know a lot about the top and bottom of the sun, as it were.
No, we don't. We've essentially never imaged it. And this is important. We know the sun is a giant magnetic ball, and that's these magnetic fluctuations, magnetic changes causes burps, and that creates solar storms. And if you think about the Earth, we have our north magnetic pole and south magnetic pole. That's why your magnets work. That's how that all comes together. And so that's where, you know, the magnetic energy comes in and out of the Earth. It does a similar thing to the sun, a bit different, but similar. And so if we're trying to understand what the magnetic activity is on the sun, which drives solar storms, which drives the impacts here on Earth, we need to see that. And as you said, it's just never been done. So it's a very important part of the sun that needs to be studied, as in addition to the surface, like the DKIST in Hawaii or Solar Parker probe.
And the three of them, I think we alluded to this last week as well, the three of them are going to work in concert and hopefully give us a really clear picture of the sun, which will help in forecasting space weather as well.
Exactly. You know, it's trying to put together, if you think about it here on Earth, yes, you can measure the wind speed, but you also need to measure pressure changes. You also need to measure temperature changes. You need different instruments that do that. And that's the same thing with the sun. It is no different with the sun. And in this case, they've built different instruments that do different things to be able to see what the sun is. And so, you know, I think we sometimes forget we're going to, just as we've been learning a lot about Mars and Pluto last decade, we'll learn a lot more about the sun this coming decade with the jumps in this technology, which will have quite big ramifications for our solar system, our understanding of Earth and of other solar systems.
And it also will play a key role in our manned mission or our crewed missions to Mars and the Moon, understanding that solar weather and what's going on inside the heliosphere.
Yeah, huge, because right now we worry about solar storms. They hit satellites, they can cause radio interference, but they also produce radiation, and we worry about the astronauts. Now, the International Space Station is still slightly protected in the Earth's magnetic bubble, a tad, and you know, something went really wrong, they can evacuate to Earth. What happens when you're bumbling between Earth and Mars for 6 months? You know, you want to predict those solar storms so they can take measures, they can protect themselves, and they can understand what's happening. And it also hits Mars, right? We forget about it. It keeps going to the Moon, and it keeps going to Mars. So we need to know them. And those places which have less of an atmosphere, or essentially no atmosphere in the case of the Moon, is so unprotected in terms of radiation. Predicting and measuring the solar storms is very critical to future success.